Hello, health champions. If you have spent years trying to lose belly fat, and I mean really trying, low-fat diets, calorie counting, cardio every morning, sit-ups, crunches, intermittent fasting maybe, and nothing has stuck, or the weight came back, I want you to know something before we start. You did not fail because you lack willpower. You did not fail because you are lazy. You failed because you were given incomplete information. And incomplete information leads to incomplete results every single time. Today, we are going to fix that. I am going to give you the complete picture of belly fat, where it actually comes from, what actually keeps it there, and exactly what it takes to get rid of it for good. Not some of it, not the fashionable piece, the whole picture. Most videos will give you one or two of these mechanisms. Some of them are good videos, but if you only understand one piece, you will only get partial results, or you will get results and then lose them, which is even more discouraging. By the end of this video, you will have a framework, a complete mental model that will make everything make sense. And once things make sense, you can take consistent action, because the biggest enemy of consistency is confusion. Let us start at the very beginning. The first and most important thing to understand is the difference between a cause and an effect. Belly fat is an effect. That sounds obvious, but most people treat it as if it were the cause of their problems. They focus on the fat sitting on their belly as if that fat were the enemy, but that fat is just sitting there. It is not doing anything on its own. It got there because of something else. If you come across a house on fire and you see the fire department there, do you conclude that the fire department caused the fire? Of course not. They are associated. You always see them together, but the fire came first. There is no causation there, just association. The same is true for belly fat and what is commonly blamed for it. People see fat on the body and assume that eating fat made it appear. They see cholesterol in arterial plaques and assume cholesterol is the villain, but that is an association, not a mechanism, not a cause. So what is the actual mechanism? What is the actual cause? There is a disease called Cushing's syndrome. In Cushing's, the body produces extreme levels of a hormone called cortisol. And what happens to patients with Cushing's syndrome? They accumulate enormous amounts of fat, specifically around the midsection, the torso, from the hips to the shoulders, the belly, the back, the neck. And here is the important part. They do not necessarily overeat. They do not lack willpower. They accumulate belly fat because of what the cortisol does. Cortisol triggers blood sugar triggers insulin. Insulin is a fat-storing hormone that selectively deposits fat. It deposits fat around the midsection when it is chronically elevated. So the mechanism runs through two hormones, cortisol and insulin. Now, most people do not have Cushing's syndrome, but an enormous percentage of the modern population has chronically elevated cortisol and insulin. Not from a disease, but from the way they live, eat, sleep, and manage stress. And that is the entire foundation of what we are going to talk about today. I want to introduce you to a framework I call the belly fat triangle. At one corner, you have insulin. At another corner, you have cortisol. At the third corner, you have the fatty liver. And these three are not independent. They feed each other in a continuous loop. High insulin promotes fat storage. High cortisol raises blood sugar, which raises insulin. A fatty liver causes insulin resistance, which requires even more insulin to do the same job. More insulin means more fat storage around the midsection. Stress raises cortisol. Poor sleep raises cortisol. And all three of these together make the fatty liver worse. This is why people with metabolic problems seem to have everything wrong at once. It is not a coincidence. They are all connected. They are the same loop, running in the same direction. And this is also why addressing just one corner of this triangle almost never works long-term. If you only address your diet but not your stress, cortisol keeps the loop going. If you only manage stress but keep eating a high-carbohydrate diet, insulin stays elevated. If you do both but never give your liver a chance to heal, the insulin resistance never fully reverses. You have to address all three corners. That is the key insight that most approaches miss. So let us go through each corner of the triangle in detail, starting with the one that is most misunderstood, which is insulin. Insulin is a vital, necessary hormone. Without it, you cannot survive. Type 1 diabetics, before synthetic insulin was developed, they died quickly. What insulin does is take glucose, blood sugar, from the bloodstream and move it into cells where it can be used for energy. Without insulin, that glucose just sits in the blood and very high blood glucose is toxic to the brain and other tissues. So we need insulin. The problem is when we have too much of it for too long. Insulin is an anabolic hormone. Anabolic means building up. Its job is to push things into cells and to store excess energy as fat. That is not a bug, that is a feature. It is designed to do that. First, insulin physically blocks fat burning. As long as insulin is elevated, your body cannot access the fat stored on your body. It is like having a fortune in a bank vault that is locked. The money exists, but you cannot get to it. And if you cannot get to it, your body experiences a sense of lack, even though you have enormous reserves. That perceived lack is what makes you hungry. Second, when you are insulin resistant, your body requires even more insulin to do the same job. The lock on that vault gets heavier and heavier. Now, which foods trigger the most insulin? If you eat fat, insulin response is minimal. If you eat protein, a moderate response. Noticeable but not dramatic. If you eat carbohydrates, the response is many, many times larger than either fat or protein. This is straightforward physiology. And yet the standard dietary guidelines for the last 50 years have told us the opposite. Eat low fat, eat frequent meals. Everyone drives insulin higher. Now here is something many people do not realize. It is not just what you eat. It is how often you eat. Every single time you eat, insulin goes up. Over years, this pushes the baseline insulin level higher and higher. The whole system becomes dysregulated. This is why the concept of a feeding window is so powerful. It is not just about the food. It is about giving insulin time to fall. Most conversations about belly fat focus on diet, some focus on exercise, very few focus on stress. And that is a massive oversight because the research is extremely clear on this. A paper published in PubMed examined the relationship between the stress response system, technically called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and the way the body manages energy. The same paper found that cortisol specifically increases consumption of foods enriched with sugar and fat. You know what those foods are called? Comfort foods, junk food. That instinct was useful when the stressor was a predator. It is destructive when the stressor is a job, a relationship, or a screen. And here's the most important distinction. Cortisol selectively deposits fat on the torso, not evenly distributed, specifically around the midsection. This is visceral fat. Visceral fat is metabolically active. It sits around your organs and produces inflammatory signals that make insulin resistance worse, which brings us back to the triangle. So how do you address cortisol? You cannot just decide to be less stressed, but you can recondition your nervous system over time. The stress is your body's response. Breathing exercises are not just relaxation techniques. By extending your exhales, you are literally training your nervous system toward a calmer baseline. Meditation works the same way, through frontal lobe activation. You are training your brain to inhibit the stress response more effectively. Over time, this becomes automatic. Sleep is the third major cortisol regulator. A single night of poor sleep measurably raises cortisol the next morning. It increases insulin resistance and cravings. The third corner of the triangle, and the one most people have never even considered, is the fatty liver. Your liver is your metabolic factory. It uses more energy than any other organ in your body, over 27% of your total energy expenditure. It processes, converts, and regulates virtually everything metabolically. And when the liver becomes damaged or overwhelmed, everything downstream breaks down. There is a condition called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. It is exactly what it sounds like, a fatty, inflamed liver in someone who does not drink alcohol. And it is now one of the most common conditions in the developed world, including in children. What causes it? 3 things overwhelm the liver. The least damaging, glucose, from rice, potatoes, bread. Glucose can be metabolized by every cell in the body. Much more damaging, fructose. Fructose, the other half of table sugar, can only be processed through the liver. 100% of it. It has the potential to overwhelm the system. Most damaging, alcohol. Same problem as fructose, liver-exclusive processing, but we restrict alcohol for children. Fructose? We put it in breakfast cereals and call it natural fruit flavor. When the liver becomes fatty, it becomes insulin resistant. It sends incorrect signals to the pancreas, which produces more insulin, making the belly fat worse. Because the liver is the central regulator of blood sugar, a dysfunctional liver creates unstable blood glucose, which drives cravings, hunger, and more poor food choices. This is why you cannot out-exercise a bad diet. Exercise uses up energy from the muscle compartment, not the liver compartment. They are separate storage systems. Only dietary change and fasting can touch it. Let us talk about exercise, because the conventional message about exercise and belly fat is almost entirely wrong. The message is, exercise burns calories. Burning calories burns fat. First, the calorie burning argument. Yes, exercise burns calories, but your body is not a simple machine. When you increase exercise, your body compensates. It reduces your basal metabolic rate. Second, targeted fat burning. You cannot pull fat out of a specific area by exercising the muscle underneath it. Crunches build core strength, but they do not burn belly fat. It is a hormonal problem. So what does exercise actually do? Working muscles can absorb glucose from the bloodstream without insulin. Contracting muscles pull glucose directly from the blood. No insulin required. Second, exercise activates the brain. Movement stimulates the mechanoreceptors in your muscles and joints. These signals travel to the brain and essentially keep it switched on at a higher level. A better functioning brain has greater capacity to regulate and inhibit stress responses. It can dampen the cortisol spikes. It can keep the system in better balance. Now, what kind of exercise? The vast majority should be aerobic. That means it is fueled by oxygen, walking, cycling, swimming, anything where you can breathe normally. At this intensity, your body burns fat. The moment you cross into anaerobic territory, you start huffing and puffing. You have switched your fuel source from fat to glucose, and that is less effective for fat burning. Intense exercise is a physiological stressor. Short bursts can be valuable, but if overdone, they raise cortisol, drive glucose cravings, and make everything harder. The practical guideline: if you can hold a conversation, you are aerobic and burning fat. If you cannot, you have crossed the line. Stay on the right side of that line for 90 to 95% of your time. Here is something that will change the way you think about your body and fat forever. People assume that because they are eating carbohydrates, their body is burning carbohydrates. But let us look at the actual numbers. Your basal metabolic rate, the energy your body uses when you are doing absolutely nothing, accounts for roughly 70% of your total energy use. Of that, your liver alone uses 27%. Your brain uses about 19%. Your muscles at rest use 18%. Your kidneys use 10%. Your heart uses 7%. Now here's the key question. What fuel do these organs prefer? The liver runs on 85% fat. The heart, the most metabolically demanding tissue relative to its size, runs on 90% fat. Muscles at rest and during moderate movement run on 85% fat. The kidneys the same. The brain is the exception. It runs on glucose, or on ketones, which are produced by the liver when glucose is low, such as during fasting or a ketogenic diet. And the brain actually functions better on ketones. Ketones provide a more stable, more efficient fuel source. This is why people report improved mental clarity. So if we add it all up, at rest, approximately 74 to 84% of your energy comes from fat, not from carbohydrates. Even if you are eating a high carbohydrate diet, your body is still converting excess carbohydrate to fat before burning it, because that is what your organs prefer. You are already a fat-burning machine. The question is just whether you are burning dietary fat or body fat, and the answer to that depends entirely on insulin. One of the most powerful and most underappreciated tools for fat loss is simply when you eat, your feeding window. Every time you eat anything, your insulin rises. It stays elevated for roughly 2 to 3 hours while your body processes and absorbs the food. During that window, you are in fat-storing mode. The moment insulin falls back to baseline, which only happens when no new food is coming in, your body can begin accessing stored fat. That is the fat-burning window. Now, if your first meal is at 7 a.m. and your last is at 9 p.m., you are in fat-storing mode for 16 hours. Fat burning is compressed into just 8 hours, a 2-to-1 ratio. Now, suppose you make one change. You stop eating at 6 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. That shifts the ratio to 12 and 12. You have doubled your effective fat-burning time. Take it further. Skip breakfast. Let your first meal be at noon. Now your feeding window is 6 hours and your fasting window is 18. The ratio has flipped. You are now burning far more than you are storing. This is not about starvation. You still eat full meals. You still eat until you are satisfied. You simply eat within a shorter window of time. And when you do it correctly, so that blood sugar is stable, you will find that the hunger between meals is genuinely manageable, often surprisingly easy. The reason: when insulin is low, your body simply uses that stored fat for energy. You are not hungry because you are not starving. You are just eating from a different pantry, the one that was always there. Before we get into the implementation plan, I want to help you figure out which of these applies most to you, because the starting point is different depending on where you are. There are 4 broad profiles I see. Profile 1, the frustrated beginner. You have tried diets before. You have lost weight and gained it back multiple times. Your energy levels are unstable. You feel good after eating but crash 2 hours later. You probably have strong cravings, especially for sugar in the afternoon. What this profile tells us: your insulin resistance is moderate to significant. Your starting point is reducing carbohydrates. Profile 2, the stressed accumulator. You do not necessarily overeat, but the weight, especially around the midsection, will not budge. You have high stress, poor sleep, and cravings when overwhelmed. Your belly feels disproportionate to the rest of your body. What this profile tells us: cortisol is driving this more than diet alone. You need to address the stress and sleep piece. Profile 3, the plateau person. You started a low-carb or keto diet and it worked for a while. You lost some weight but then hit a wall. You have been at the same weight for months despite staying consistent. What this profile tells us: you have addressed insulin, which is excellent, but the fatty liver component may still be present. You likely need to extend your fasting window significantly. Profile 4, the comprehensive case. You have all of the above: insulin resistance, high stress, sleep problems, probably some degree of fatty liver. You have tried everything and nothing has lasted. This is not a signal to despair. It is a signal to be comprehensive. You can address all of it. It just takes more time and consistency than Profile 1. Most people know which one they are. Be honest with yourself about it, because your starting point determines your starting actions. Now let us talk about what to actually do, and we are going to do it in phases because trying to change everything at once usually fails. We want to build momentum. Phase 1. Week 1, the foundation. First priority: remove all forms of added sugar. Sugar is genuinely addictive. It activates reward pathways in the brain. It also drives fatty liver disease. Second, eliminate all liquid carbohydrates: juice, soda, sweet coffee. Third, begin narrowing your feeding window by 2 hours. This one change alone begins to improve your fat-burning ratio. Do not try to exercise intensely in week 1 if you are dramatically changing your diet. Light walking is ideal, 20 to 30 minutes per day at a comfortable pace. Phase 2, week 2. Deepen the changes. Reduce total carbohydrates to under 50 grams of net carbs per day. This means removing bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes. Replace those carbohydrate calories with fat and protein from whole food sources: meat, fish, eggs, avocado, nuts, seeds. Fatty cuts are preferable. They are more satisfying. Extend your feeding window further. Target 16 hours fasting, 8 hours eating. Begin a consistent movement practice: brisk walking and resistance training 2 days per week. Phase 3, month 1 and beyond. Optimization. Continue reducing your feeding window if progress has slowed. Moving toward a 6-hour eating window is appropriate for most people. If you have hit a plateau, add a 24-hour fast once per week. It sounds difficult, but it is far more manageable once you are fat adapted. Trust the mechanism. Address sleep deliberately. Limit screens after 9 p.m. Keep your room cool and dark. If stress is significant, begin a 10-minute breathing or meditation practice before bed. And finally, be patient with the timeline. Deep hormonal normalization takes longer than weeks. Trust the process if you understand the mechanism. Before we close, let me go through some of the things that silently undermine people's progress, even when they think they are doing everything right. Mistake 1, hidden insulin triggers during your fasting window. If you are taking gummy vitamins, any gummy supplement, you are spiking your insulin. The sugar in those gummies is real. The same goes for skim milk in coffee. 1 tablespoon of cream, negligible insulin impact. 2 or 3 tablespoons of skim milk, enough sugar to stimulate an insulin response. Use cream or black. Mistake 2, under-eating during your eating window. Some people get so disciplined about the fasting window that they also restrict how much they eat when they do eat. This sends a signal to the hypothalamus. The brain responds by lowering the basal metabolic rate. It turns the thermostat down to preserve energy. Then weight loss slows or stops. The solution: when it is time to eat until you are genuinely satisfied, not stuffed, satisfied. Your meal should feel like a real meal. Mistake 3, too much high-intensity exercise. It is a stressor. It raises cortisol. It depletes glucose and creates powerful cravings for carbohydrates afterward. Mistake 4, expecting linear progress. Your weight on the scale reflects hydration, glycogen, and stress. It is a noisy signal. Do not make decisions based on one random morning. Pay attention to non-scale markers: energy levels, sleep quality, mental clarity, how your clothes fit. These often move in the right direction before the scale does. Let me bring it all together. Belly fat is not a willpower problem. It is a hormonal problem, specifically a problem involving insulin, cortisol, and liver function. Those are the 3 corners of the triangle. The path forward is clear. Reduce carbohydrates, narrow your feeding window, manage stress and sleep, and exercise correctly. Be patient and be consistent. You now have the complete picture. Use it. Subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a life-saving video. I will see you in the next one.